Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my February TBR, and since this is my second TBR for the year, I just want to say that the change that I made at the beginning of the year, which was to cut my TBR videos in half, so like put the number of books on my TBR, essentially I wanted to cut in half because last year I was feeling a lot of pressure and I ended up reading books every month that were not actually the books that I put on my TBR, calling into question the very existence of a TBR. So I decided that since my average number of books that I read a month is usually like somewhere between 8 to 10, I thought that 5 books was the maximum that I would put on a TBR, and then that would leave a lot of space for mood reading or picking up spontaneous buddy reads or those kinds of things. So that is a change that I made and I'm very happy with. It made my January reading really easy because I never felt all of that pressure to read specific things on specific days, and I'm going to continue with it. The very first book that I'm going to talk about, and I have a couple of them actually physically because I'm also trying my best to read from my physical TBR, and the very first one is this beast. And this is the main reason I wanted to bring it down, is just like to demonstrate how giant it is. This is a beastly book. And is, of course, Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And this is a book that I've only owned it since Christmas because it was a Christmas gift from my husband, but I have had it on my hypothetical TBR for a really long time. It is one of the most intimidating books that I would like to read. And it's up there with, there's probably a couple of others. I would need to think on the ones that have either been on my TBR for a really long time because I'm worried about understanding them, or they're really big, or some combination of the two. But Infinite Jest is a book that I've wanted to read for a long time. I actually don't know that much about it, aside from the fact that it's supposed to be like a postmodern, absurd, strange kind of story. So I am reading this with a couple of friends on Discord, a couple of whom have booktube channels. So if we have a good time reading it, maybe we will get together and do a discussion about it. I think it's going to depend on how much we actually have to say and how much we get out of the experience. But if you, like me, have been putting off Infinite Jest for a large portion of your life, this might be a good time to pick it up. We're going to be chatting about it on Discord, helping each other along. We have somebody reading along with us who read it last year and loved it so much that he's rereading it with us this year. So to me, that is a positive sign, and hopefully I will end up enjoying it just as much. But it is giant and I am scared, but hopefully it will be a fun time. So that is the first book. That's Infinite Jest. And the next two I actually got from the library. So they're not from my physical TBR list, but they're books that I saw at the library and picked up because I really wanted to read them. And the first is The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So I have now read, I believe, 4 works by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I have read Children of Time, which is sci-fi. I've read Guns of the Dawn, which is like historical fantasy. It's not historical fantasy because it doesn't take place in our world, but it is fantasy that feels like historical fiction. Then I have read 2 novellas, which were Elder Race and Ogres. And one thing that has really struck me about Adrian Tchaikovsky's work is how different it all feels. Like you see people on BookTube sometimes talk about thinking about whether or not an author is for them because they've sampled a couple of their books and they haven't really worked well, and so they, can say with some measure of confidence that they don't want to read that author anymore. And in lots of cases, that's true because an author has a distinctive style. Sometimes they have a topic or an era that they really like to write about, and their books feel very similar. Adrian Tchaikovsky, at least the 4 books that I have read, or 4 works, because a couple of them were novellas, have all felt so unique. There is a thread that ties them together that makes them feel Tchaikovsky-esque to me, and that is just that I think he spends a lot of time thinking about contemplating the cultural environment of his characters. He thinks a lot about the world that they live in, the place they occupy in society, and how that affects them and affects the people around them. But the scenarios, the settings, the execution is always really, really unique. And I am so impressed by it. And I want to read more Tchaikovsky. I have enjoyed all of his books to various degrees. Like there are some that I absolutely loved. There are some that I liked. But what I have found about all of them is that they all feel very fresh. So when I saw this in the library, it was just on a display. I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick it up. I am going to read it and hopefully I will enjoy it. It looks really beefy, but it has giant font. Like, I don't know if anybody can even see that, but like the printing is really big and it's very spaced. So I don't think like it's, 596 pages. I don't think it's going to read like a 600-page book because it is pretty large. So I'm looking forward to this one. If you have read The Doors of Eden in a non-spoilery way, please tell me if you enjoyed or where it might rank in your Tchaikovsky reading, if you've read multiple things by him. The final book that I have, and I have the rest of my TBR stuck on with a Post-it note, so I'll just take that off. But the final one I have from the library is Stoner by John Williams. I read Augustus by John Williams at the end of 2022 and really enjoyed it. And so this is one that I actually requested from the library because it was on my list of 23 books that I wanted to read in 2023. I am looking forward to this. I know that both Alan from the Library of Alexandria and Joanna have both really liked this book, and it cemented John Williams as one of their favorite non-fantasy authors. So I think, or I hope, that I'm going to really like it as well. And I am looking forward to seeing how it differs because I've also heard that there is a lot of difference between Augustus and Stoner and that they're very good in completely different ways. And it's always nice to see authors who have that range. It is exciting. It's good when you find a nice, cozy author who writes the same types of things and you can reliably go back to them and enjoy their stories and know when they put something out that it's going to be something that you'll love. But it is equally exciting to find an author whose books feel like a new discovery every time. So hoping that I will really like this one. If I like Stoner, then I will also try to prioritize some of his other books maybe later this year. But really looking forward to that one. The fourth book that is on my TBR is another buddy read, and this is going to be with my friend Baron, and the name, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, is This Tender Land. And I didn't write down the author's name, but I think... is his first name William? Maybe William Kent Kruger. I know his last name is Kruger, but this is a work of historical fiction or like literary historical fiction. I believe it has elements of a coming of age story. I had quickly skimmed the Goodreads reviews when Baron had asked me if I wanted to buddy read it with him. And a couple had mentioned that it had Stand By Me vibes, which is something that obviously is like a green flag for me, something that highlights that this book probably will be one that I will enjoy. It has a really high rating on Goodreads. I remember thinking that when I saw it. I don't know if it was like a 4.2 or 4.3 or something, which seems pretty high to me. But I'm looking forward to it. I am trying to make sure that I don't only read fantasy this year. Obviously, the bulk of what I will be reading is fantasy because that's my favorite thing to read. But it's nice to put some other things on the TBR, help introduce people to some other books. So we'll be reading that one with Baron. And I think my friend Penny will also, or our friend Penny, I guess, will be joining us as well. And then the very last book that I have on the official TBR is going to be my audiobook for February, and that is A Natural History of Dragons. So this was one of my priority series to start in 2023, and I'm really looking forward to it. Everything that everyone has said about this series makes me feel like it is going to work well for me. I just have a feeling that I'm going to love it based on the things that I'm interested in and based on the way that I've heard people talk about it. Essentially what it is it is a series of faux memoirs that are penned by a lady named Lady Trent. And she either was a naturalist or studied that field of biology. And she's kind of reflecting back and giving her thoughts on the study of dragons. And I am all about it. I am so excited for this series. Like I said, I have really high hopes for this one. I think it is going to end up being a favorite of all time, or at least I really hope that it's going to be a favorite of all time. At the very least, I'm sure that I will enjoy it. And I've heard that the audiobooks are particularly good. So I do have the first audiobook. If I like the narration, I'll continue along with them in that fashion. But the covers of these books are really cool as well. So if I like the book, but I'm not the biggest fan of the narrative style or the narration on the audiobook, then I'll just switch over and grab the physical copies. But that is the final book that I am putting on my official TBR for February. Some of the things that are kind of like swimming around in my head that I might feel like reading, I really want to finish up with the Age of Madness trilogy. So I am part of the way through book 2 right now. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to finish book 2. I don't know if that's going to happen now in January, if I'll finish by the end of the month, or if it'll be early February, and then potentially carry carry on right into book 3 right afterwards. I just got the newest English translation of the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation in the mail a couple of days ago, so I will probably end up putting that on the TBR, or I'll probably end up reading that. I'm not putting it on the TBR. The TBR is done. There's 5 books on it, but I may end up reading that. And I also would like to get to Ship of Destiny as well, but not going to officially put it on the TBR because we'll have to see how I'm feeling at the time during the month. But that's it. Those are the books that I am going to try really hard to read this month. Please let me know what you'll be reading. You know what? I'm just realizing that next month is February. I guarantee you I'm going to read a romance novel in February. I always do around Valentine's Day. I don't have any right now that are like sitting at the top of my pile. So if anybody has a romance recommendation that they want to leave below, I know that's not usually the target of these videos and this particular channel, but if you have a good one that you would like to see me pick up in February, or that you recommend that I could pick up around Valentine's Day, then I will probably read something of that nature as well. But please tell me what you are going to be reading in February, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye!